Hello and welcome to Deacon's Virtual Open Day. My name is Dr. Sevi Vassos, and today I'm joined by Professor Beth Crisp and Associate Professor Priscilla Dunk-West. We're absolutely thrilled to have you here with us to explore the Bachelor of Social Work. We'll also be hosting a live Q&A session after this information session so that we can answer any questions that you might have. So you can actually start writing your questions in the panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and these will be responded to during the live Q&A. As we gather here to learn a little bit more about the Bachelor of Social Work, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which Deakin has its campuses. I'd particularly like to acknowledge the unceded lands of the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation, which is where I am at the moment, which is part of Waterfront Campus, or where Waterfront Campus is on. And I would like to pay my respects to the ancestral spirits, to elders, past, present and emerging, of the Wadawurrung people. I also acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and the Djimara people who have a continuing connection to the land and waterways and community. And I'd like to express my gratitude for the First Nations people's care of the land, and they've continued to sustain this land for many, many thousands of years. Education has a long and rich heritage on this continent, which we aim to honour and reflect in the ways we teach and we learn here at Deakin. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of social work and what social work is, and why social work at Deakin might be a choice for you to make. I'd also like to talk through a few things around course structure and entry requirements, and also what careers you might pursue as graduates of the Deakin Social Work program. So let's kick it off with, what is social work? Now, a key role for social work is improving the quality of life of people and communities. Often we work with those who are vulnerable or marginalised in some or many different ways. So social work is a discipline that is value-based, and our main value is being to work and to value the intrinsic worth and dignity of people, no matter what their circumstances. So we're often working within ethical dilemmas, which are often challenging but invigorating aspects of work also. My career led me to work with people who had recently arrived to Australia because they were survivors of torture or trauma in their places of birth. And I've also worked in the Commonwealth Government in a completely different role, where I was actually looking after the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander services, but also migrant services within the Commonwealth Government at Centrelink for 16 years, before I decided to go back out into the community and actually take on an advocacy role around refugees and particularly asylum seekers. So you can see there that social work can be rather broad, but ultimately, whether we're working with individual people or whether we're working with communities, or even when we're working around policy, our emphasis is on actually enabling people to be empowered so that their lives change and they can better their life circumstances. Okay, so if you're someone who's concerned with issues of social justice and you're passionate about the rights and interests and needs of the most vulnerable people in our community, social work is potentially a profession for you. So just to give you a little more information about social work, many people often come to social work because they're concerned about a particular social issue or a range of issues, issues like domestic violence or refugees and asylum seekers or juvenile justice or poverty. Often many of us who come to social work with lived experiences of some of these social issues. And that's what often prompts us to actually be part of a profession that is all about helping other people improve their life circumstances. Okay, so social work is a growing profession. So the Australian Government Employment website attests to the fact that unemployment for social workers is really, really low. And growth of jobs is predicted within the next 5 years. There are many ways to be a social worker. As I explained to you, my journey started in a very small community-based organisation working with refugees and migrants, and then I went on to work at government and a huge government organisation that was nationwide, and then I went to a state service. So there's different places that you can work at as a social worker, and certainly there are different things that you can do as a social worker. Many social workers don't actually have the title social work in their job description because they're working in organisations across a range of different things. But what binds us together is this focus on making things more equitable, challenging and resisting power structures that actually keep people in disadvantaged positions. So that's what we're on about. We're on about the human rights of individuals and families and communities. So we can work in a range of different sort of contexts, like in crisis intervention or with individuals in more medium to long-term counselling, or we can work with communities and actually encourage communities to take on a political stance and change things within their neighbourhoods, or we can be talking to politicians and looking to shift government policies that are, in ways disadvantaging particular groups. So why study here at Deakin? Well, we actually work really, really hard here at Deakin to make learning accessible to a wide range of students. So many of our students are mature age students. Many of our students have got family commitments and work commitments. And what we seek to do is give people an opportunity to come into studying social work when in past times they may not have had those opportunities. So 2/3 of our students actually study online. So they study online for most of the time, and we invite them in for some intensive face-to-face sessions, up to 20 days for the whole course. There's some face-to-face classes, but generally online students will study online. Then we have another cohort, a smaller cohort of students who actually come and do all of their classes face-to-face. So there's flexible arrangements here at Deakin. So you could be studying online or face-to-face, or a bit of both. So often we have a range of options to enable you to be able to study here at Deakin. The other thing is, as part of a social work course, you gain over 1,000 hours of industry experience. So there are 2 placements that are attached to this course, and those 2 placements are there to prepare you for life and work as a seasoned practitioner. We offer full-time and part-time, and there are options to go, COVID permitting, there are options to going overseas also for one of your placements, or doing a study tour overseas. And you'll notice when you come to Deakin, you'll notice that there's a diversity of students. So we have people from very different backgrounds, different ages, different genders, different ethnicities, different life circumstances. So there's a richness there around exchanging ideas with groups of people who offer quite different perspectives from your own. So, as I said before, you have 1,000 hours of practical experience as part of your course here. And a lot of the assessment work that we do is based in real life practice. So you would do assessments that will help you actually practice in the real world. So we don't do the stock standard exams for every unit, because we're more interested in how you apply your learning to real life situations. So in doing this course, you end up being accredited for the Australian Association of Social Workers, you know, tick of approval, if you like. So you can become a member of the Australian Association of Social Work as part of when you graduate from this particular course, because they actually ensure the quality of our education. We have a range of facilities here at Deakin, and one of the most exciting things about your education in social work in Deakin is that we have a range of online simulations. So we are very big on simulating practice learning, so that you're not only learning from textbooks and from discussions, but you're learning from real life case scenarios. And of course, as I mentioned before, you get to even really hone your skills by going out into a real world practice organisation. And in fact, 2 real life practice organisations, because there are 2 placements. All right, in terms of studying online, we've got a lot of experience. And in fact, when COVID hit in 2020, where other universities had struggled quite seriously to be able to resume their classes, it was quite seamless for us, because we've got 40 years of experience in online learning. So all of our digital platforms, our learning resources are actually quite advanced. Another thing that that I'd like to impress on you is that there are a range of financial supports and scholarships as part of study here at Deakin. So on the screen there, you'll see that there is a web page for scholarships. Access to most information about Deakin can be accessed through Google. If you just plug in Deakin scholarships, Deakin financial support, you'll actually be taken to the right page, where you get a lot of information about what sorts of scholarships are available for students and what sort of activities are supported in terms of bursaries. And you'll be pleased to know that your 1,000 hours of placement, there are bursaries to support that work integrated learning for particular groups of people. So I encourage you to go and look at the relevant slide, the relevant web page there, to actually access information about these bursaries and scholarships. So we've got a number of quotes here from students of ours, recent student of ours, who have been part of the Deakin community and are now fully fledged social workers and practicing. So here's one from Carmel Stephian, who completed her studies with us online. So you can see there that Carmel has been particularly supported or felt supported by the learning environment and the collaborative approach that we take in our teaching and learning. And here you have Georgina. She joins also part of our Bachelor of Social Work program, but unlike Carmel, Georgina did her program face-to-face. And as you can see here, she was attracted to Deakin because of word of mouth and the wonderful things that people continue to say about our program here at Deakin. All right. So what's the course about? Well, it's a 4-year course full-time, and also you have the part-time option of 8 years. So with a 4-year course, you start off with a range of subjects that are related to social work. They're your core subjects around sociology and psychology and health. And you have some social work subjects in there also. Additionally, once you get to your 2nd year, you're doing more of the core social work subjects, and you have access to electives. So at the end of your 2nd year, or the second part of your 2nd year, you do a unit called Placement Readiness, Preparing for Supervised Social Work Practice, and that will enable you or prepare you for your practice learning, which is your first field education placement in your first trimester of the 3rd year. And then after you've been out for 14 weeks or 500 hours, you know, out there testing your knowledge and your skills, you actually come back to get some more learning, some more academic learning before you go out again in your 4th year. Now, if you're traveling really well and you're interested in research, also get the opportunity to join the honours program in your 4th year. So there's a slightly different course structure for honours, but we will tell you more about that. And we start talking to you about honours in the 1st year, in the 1st trimester. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities to talk about research and honours streams if you're interested. Okay, so course details, basically. There are different pathways into the course. It's 4 years full-time or equivalent part-time, which is roughly 8 years. You can come in via VCE. So if you've done your 3rd and 4th year units and you've achieved at least 30 in your English language skills and 25 if you're in English as an English other than the standard English language, and that's for students who are from a non-English speaking background. And if your ATAR is sitting at about 73 plus, then you can come into the face-to-face program, or if your ATAR is sitting at 70 plus, you can also come into the online program. You can come into the program if you're coming through at least having done a certificate for in a related discipline, things like community services or alcohol and other drugs. So certificates in those areas, or mental health, all of those certificates in those areas can enable you to come into the program also. So if you've completed either your VCE or a TAFE certificate at level 4 or above, you can come into the program. We do ask that you provide us with some information such as transcripts and the like for us to be able to assess whether you're able to come into the program. Sometimes we ask you to even provide a personal statement to talk to us about why it is that you're interested in social work, to enable us to make those assessments. So we encourage you to make your application. We're very keen to have a variety of different people in our courses, and certainly we're very keen to support you to complete your course and become a qualified social worker. We've also have the availability of entry for international students. So what I would encourage international students to do is to actually make contact with the international office if there are any international students in the audience, and they will be able to talk you through what you need to do in order to in order to enter as an international student. So, as I was saying before, there are a number of pathways into social work. You can study at high school and get your ATAR and then come in, or if you haven't got your ATAR, or your ATAR has lapsed, if you've done study in a TAFE at level 4 or certificate 4 rather, or higher in a related discipline, then you can certainly come into the program. We also have a Master of Social Work program, and that's for students who have already done an undergraduate degree and are wanting to qualify as a social worker. So instead of doing the 4 years, because they've already done an undergraduate degree, which is usually 3 years, we actually get them to come in as a Master of Social Work student and do 2 years in order to qualify as a social worker. Now, just wanted to highlight to you that social work is a thriving business, if I can call it that, because it's not really a business. It's more of a calling. And you'll see just through these job postings on seek.com, for example, there were 36,500 social work related job posts in the previous 30 days from the 10th of March. That is nationwide. So there are lots and lots of jobs for qualified social workers. So it's a good investment in terms of being able to move forward into a career. Now, projected employment for the growth of social workers is forecast to increase by 23% by 2026. So 2026, if you commence in 2023 and you're doing the program full time, you'll be hitting that growth spurt in terms of careers in social work. So you can work, as I mentioned previously, in a wide range of fields. You can work in local, state or federal government departments, or you can work in non-government organisations that provide social services or health services, and you can also work in business organisations. There are a lot of business organisations, like, for example, legal firms that actually hire social workers now. They hire social workers to work alongside of the lawyers around issues that impact people's social justice. You can be working with individuals, with families, with communities. You can be doing that face-to-face counselling or casework, or you can be advocating for changes in policy, or even doing research that will enable you to argue a particular point with government to get things changed. So it's very diverse in terms of a career. And as I was saying, it's very diverse, and these are some of the areas in which social workers work. So policy development and research, counselling that I mentioned before, family therapy is a growing field for social workers, as is drug and alcohol counselling. Community development work is that grassroots work that we do with groups of people in their communities and in their neighbourhoods to get things changed within their communities. Refugee assistance, and even tribunal work. Social workers are often in tribunals to help make decisions around situations such as reviews and appeals of government decisions. So, range of different roles that we take, and as I said right at the beginning, very few social work jobs carry the title social work. They're often called different things like careers counsellors and case managers and child and family counsellors and drug and alcohol case workers and a range of other things. So thanks for joining us for this pre-recorded information session, and please stick around for our live Q&A now so that you can have your questions answered. And certainly if you have any further questions, you can keep on putting them or recording them on your screen so that they'll be picked up by the panel. Alternatively, you can ask your questions live. And I'd encourage you to join us on campus for the open day in August, because we're back. We're back after so many years of not being able to do face-to-face. We are able to open up our doors again this year in August, and we're hoping to see you face-to-face so that we can give you a real-life view of what it's like to study at Deakin. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this Q&A session for our virtual open day around social work. So I'd like to start by paying my respects to the traditional custodians of the lands that we're all on today. And I'd like to welcome our panel. We have Professor Beth Crisp, who is the head of social work here at the university. We have Dr. Rojan Afrouz, who is one of our teaching and research staff here at Deakin in social work, and we have Christy Welsh, who is a third-year Bachelor of Social Work student. So welcome to our panel today. We're going to answer as many questions as we can today, and we've got lots of questions commencing. So let's get started. So the first question is, what's the difference between the bachelor's and the master's in social work? Beth, did you want to take that question?
Okay, both degrees get you a qualification that's accredited by the Australian Association of Social Workers. But the bachelor's degree is essentially for someone who hasn't got a previous degree. The master's, and that's a 4-year degree. The Masters of Social Work is a 2-year degree, but it assumes you've already got a previous degree. So yeah, they both will qualify you, but they're different lengths and they have different prerequisites.
Thank you. We've got a question from Emily. What accreditations can you receive from this course, as well as what jobs can you get after and during course completion? Rojan, did you want to take that question?
Yes, so we have accreditation body, which is an Australian Association of Social Workers. And when you graduate, you automatically will be qualified for membership of this for AASW. And also there are a range of jobs that you can have as social worker. Obviously, if you're interested in working in domestic violence and family violence, child protection, mental health, working with people at risk of homelessness, and all of other government and non-government jobs, and also private practice.
That kind of leads us into we've got a question from Mel, and Christy, this might be something that's right up your alley since you're on placement at the moment. So the question is, where do you do placements, and what do placements look like, as well as how many hours do they involve? So we know they involve 2 500-hour placements, but Christy, did you want to talk a bit about where you do placements in the Bachelor of Social Work?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So as I said, I'm on my first placement at the moment, and I'm actually working in partnership between Deakin and BCYF, so Barwon Youth, Child and Family. I'm on a research-based placement, working with refugees from Myanmar. It can range. There's so many of my peers are on completely different placements, ranging from school support, working in hospital-based placement. Yeah, there's so many different avenues depending on your interests and where you want to grow. And again, my next placement, which is next year, will be different again. Yeah.
Thank you. And as we know, social workers work in a range of practice settings, so the options for placement are many and varied. And we've got a question from Denise around what placement might look like for mature age students who work full-time and study part-time. And Deakin offers part-time study in terms of flexibility on how the study can be undertaken. Is there a possibility to use your current employment for your placement? Beth, did you want to answer this question?
Yeah, I will. That's a great question. We allow students to do placement either 3, 4 or 5 days a week. So we recognise that a lot of our students are part-time and would like to do a placement part-time. It will take you best part of 6 months, probably about 22, 23 weeks to do a placement that's 3 days a week. So whereas it's probably about 13 weeks if you're doing it 5 days a week. So yeah, it'll be the number of days and number of hours which counts. So if it's a part-time placement on 3 days a week or 4 days a week, it's going to take you longer to do your placement.
Thanks.
What's the other part of the question? Sorry.
For mature age students in terms of part-time work, so flexibility around working part-time.
Really, we don't make pretty much most of our students are mature age, but really we don't say, oh, it's not only, it's any student can apply to have a placement that's part-time or full-time. So we look at your needs, we look at the placements that are being offered. The more restrictive you are, that sometimes can place, if you've got restrictions, sometimes that can restrict the placements that are offered, because some agencies may only be willing to offer a full-time placement. But we do have lots of students who are part-time and some really good placements. So so I guess, yeah, there will be opportunities for you.
And one of the questions I know that came up was around what's the Deakin difference, if you like, and I guess this might be a chance to talk about our cloud-based learning and then our on-campus-based learning, because I think sometimes placement can be an option where students decide to go full-time, for example, but then having those options in terms of studying online or study on campus. Do you want to just kind of speak to that?
Yeah, Deakin's one of the really great things about Deakin, and I've worked in a number of other universities with social work, so I can give you some real life comparisons. Deakin is really flexible. You can move between being full-time and being part-time and back again at different parts of your course, depending on what's going on in the rest of your life. You can also move, we have the Bachelor of Social Work is offered in both on campus at the Geelong Waterfront campus and in possibly next year in Warrnambool. That's not been finalised, but we're hoping that. And it's also offered in the cloud. The majority of our students are actually enrolled in the cloud. Cloud students do most of their work in the cloud, but then they come onto campus for about a week each, a week in each of the 4 years of the full-time studies. So there are, you will at some stage, whichever mode you're in, come and visit us on campus and get to spend some time with other students and staff. But we certainly there's a lot of flexibility, and students quite often start on campus and move to cloud. And sometimes students will start in the cloud and actually decide they want to move to on-campus studies.
we've got a question from Dion. What's the difference between an undergraduate in psychology and then studying in social work? It seems the careers are similar at that level. That's a really good question. Who wants to take that one? No, shall I? I'm happy to take it. I think having studied social work myself, I remember having studied sociology as an undergraduate, and I wanted to do something with those studies, and I wanted to be something. And I think the beauty of studying social work is that you become a social worker. You're qualified as a social worker, and you're accredited as a social worker. Doing an undergraduate in psychology doesn't mean that you're an accredited psychologist, and I guess that's the difference. And I know that some people start out studying psychology and then move to, so say, do a Bachelor of Arts and major in psychology, and then maybe go on to do the 2-year masters. So that's what I've seen, and I guess the difference is, yes, that qualification to be a profession that's recognised.
And also we have more and holistic view, particularly I'm working with people. And I do remember a couple of weeks ago, I had the conversation with one of our 4th-year social work student, and he studied 2 years in psychology, and then when he realized how social work was, because he had one unit as elective for his study, and when he knew that we have holistic view and that would be more support around case management, he changed actually his degree to social work, because it's more engaging with clients and more support to them. I think it's broader context, and you can have more opportunities to support your clients. Christy, do you have any more?
Yeah, I agree with that. I initially enrolled in Bachelor of Psychology with Deakin, it was years ago, and I did about 1.5 years. And while it was fascinating to me, it just wasn't something that was sticking. It wasn't something I was passionate about. And then after starting this degree, I found the reason why. And it's very similar to what Rojan just said, is that psychology, there's a place for it, absolutely. It wasn't for me, but it was more, I guess, medically modelled and focused on the individual and things, whereas this degree is a lot more holistic and also doesn't just look at individuals, but looks at communities and the broader systems and all that sort of stuff. So it aligned much better with me. Yeah,
it's often said that social work is about the person in the environment. So we're not only we're interested in both people, but also their broader contexts. And a lot of social work recognises, a lot of the time in social work, we recognise that it's not necessarily the problem with the individual. The problem might be for individuals is actually their environment. So actually that's the environment we need to be working on to improve their well-being.
And I think social work definitely has that psychosocial focus, that dual focus, where that is that individual, so drawing from psychological theories of people, as well as sociological and broader systems perspectives. We've got a question from Kelly, who's asking about applying to the Bachelor of Social Work, and the question is, the Deakin Bachelor of Social Work is very competitive. Can you give any tips on how to make an application stand out?
Yeah, I can. First of all, answer the question. It might sound silly, and I'm not sure whether you're applying through VTAC or whether you're applying directly to the university, so that'll depend on if you're a current Year 12 student, you need to apply through VTAC. If you're applying through VTAC, there is an opportunity to make a statement about yourself, and it's worth taking the time to make that statement about why the course interests you. So think about that. If you're applying directly to Deakin, again, there'll be an opportunity to write a statement about yourself and your interests. So yes, we look at the marks, but if you're if we're down to sort of looking at, the difference between you and someone else, and you've got a really good statement about why you want to do it, of course, do that. if you're eligible for special consideration or you think you are, apply through VTAC, apply for it. But one of the great things that a lot of people don't do is that they don't get their special consideration because they don't read all the information properly and provide all the evidence that's required. So there's actually, if you're interested in a course, start looking soon once the application's open, what's required, and put your application in early, but also make sure you've actually had enough time to actually answer all the questions and put in all the information that's required. Because a lot of people who don't, I mean, I've seen a lot of applications from people who they think they're they say, look, yeah, I want to do this, but they haven't actually provided us with sufficient information, particularly evidence of prior qualifications. That's a really great one where we often see people have applied and they say, yeah, I've done this diploma, I've done this, but they haven't provided us with the evidence. And we have to actually, we can't go on just your claims, we actually need the evidence of those qualifications.
So read, really understand the application and make sure that you kind of state your case. We've got another question here about what sectors you can work in and after completing the course. And the question is, what are some of the specific types of roles you can get? But I thought we'd answer that as well as another question where somebody's asked about whether they should study social work or youth work if they just want to work with children. So this is around, I guess, what sectors can social workers work in? Anybody want to answer that one in particular? I mean, I think we could take this in various ways. We could take it across the life course. So social workers work with from young babies and children and their families and caregivers all the way to older age, all through those age stages. And then, of course, there's specific disciplines or practice areas that social workers work in. Rajan, you look enthused to kind of talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, and it will change sometimes based on government policy. For instance, in domestic and family violence, which I'm aware of, since last year, you should have social work qualification to apply for a job and to get job. So if you have social work, let's say you are a graduate from our courses at Deakin, MSW, or BSW, so you can get that job. But I'm not sure about youth work particularly, for instance. It's because I'm following up just on social work degrees and which sector we can practice. But there are more and more of those sectors, particularly through Royal Commission recommendations that social workers, social work degrees are really critical for those jobs.
Mm-hmm. And I think social work is a sort of generic qualification. So we make sure that our graduates are able to work with children, young people, families, older people, adults, a whole range of different client groups. So it is that qualification that enables you to practice across the life course, I guess, is an answer to that question. Another question was just going back to our discussion about cloud studies or studies through the cloud or on the cloud. A question is, as an online student, how often in 1 year would you attend in Geelong?
Yeah, I can answer to this question. So if you are full-time and you have 4 years of study for Bachelor of Social Work, based on our AASW guideline, as online students, you need to have 20 days on campus attendance, but this is through all 4 years. So each year you have one block and we will do it in 1 week, not all over the place. So 5 days, let's say in first year, 5 days in second year, 5 days in third, and another 5 days in fourth year. But these are just for your units and your study across those units. Placement is totally different story. You need to have 1,000 hours of doing your placement, but so you can't do it online, that one. But for just study online, you have these 20 days attendance. Christy, do you want to add, because you are an online student?
Yes, I am. I signed up as a cloud student, and so majority of it is online. I really look forward to the intensive weeks, which is what Rojan was talking about with the 5 days every year. There's some things that you can't get online, and being on campus makes a huge difference. But I've realised myself that I'm actually looking at switching to on-campus soon. I just find because of lockdown and what we've been through over the last few years, I'm just yearning for that person-person interaction. But I've had a mixture of both, and being a cloud student, once you get used to it, it works really well, and there's a lot of flexibility around it, especially as a parent.
And we have online catch up every week. Obviously, even if you are online, we often do it like in the evening, after hours. So you have those online engagement with us, but those 5 days face-to-face teaching each year also we call as intensive. So that would be compulsory, but as Christy said, you can change to be on campus, getting back to cloud or online study. So we are very flexible. So that's why you should choose Deakin.
Thank you. And one question we've got here is there currently a high demand for social work graduates?
Absolutely. This is one of the Commonwealth Government's own figures in the last few years have shown a great need for the increasing numbers of social work. We've got, as Rojan said, there's been increasing requirements for people in the family violence sphere. There's been the NDIS. There's an increasing ageing population. There's certainly shortages of child protection workers. Many of our students actually get jobs in the sector before they're even graduated.
Yeah.
So there is plenty of work. All of our students get jobs. All our graduates get jobs.
Yeah. Another question is, what is the most rewarding part of the profession?
Working with people.
Yeah.
I can add to that, even though I'm not graduated yet, if you like.
Yes, please.
For me, it's actually been, I love working with people and always have. I've used to work with children and families, but even though I'm still only in my 3rd year, the most rewarding thing for me has been learning so much more about myself. Yeah.
Great. A question from Mel. Can you specialise in a particular area through this bachelor's degree? And this kind of goes to what we were talking about before, doesn't it, around the kind of that generic qualification. Beth, did you want to respond to this one?
Look, it is a generic qualification. I mean, you do 2 places, so you can do some areas, a bit more specialisation in some areas, and certainly you can, in some subjects, you'll have opportunities to write assignments in areas of interest. So although it's not you can't necessarily completely specialise in an area of interest, you can do quite, if there are areas of interest you've got lots of interest in, you can do quite a bit of work in those areas. So
one of the questions that came up before was around counselling, whether as a graduate you could be a counsellor. So the question is, at the end of the Master of Social Work or the Bachelor of Social Work, are you a qualified counsellor, or do you need to complete a graduate certificate or graduate diploma of counselling if you want to engage in counselling as part of your work? And I guess that speaks to the generic qualification. I know that I graduated social work and became a counsellor, but sometimes people want to go on and specialise in particular types of counselling, so narrative therapy or different approaches to counselling. Rojan, did you want to kind of respond to that one?
Beth?
Oh, you want to go to Beth? Sorry.
Both the bachelor's and the master's degrees, they are initial qualifications, and yes, a lot of people will go on and specialise in areas of expertise, but that's the same in many different professions, is that people do their initial qualification and then go on and specialise. I guess one of the things we often get asked is, yes, social workers can get a Medicare number, but straight after your Bachelor's of Social Work or straight after your Master's of Social Work, you won't actually be eligible for a Medicare number at that stage. You have to be, I've worked for a couple of years at least, I think, in the mental health area, and I've done the accredited mental health worker training, what's involved with that in order to become to get a Medicare number. But yes, this is a profession. Many people will be surprised that some social workers do have Medicare numbers, and many of those people will actually work in private practice. I think that's not an area that Roseanne mentioned before with the list of areas that she talked about people working in.
That's true. And, you know, social workers, like many professions, as social workers, we're committed to continuing our professional development, and that can be part of that process. And we've got a question here for Christy, just to put you right in the hot seat again. Which area do you see yourself working in say 5 to 10 years? Would it be a specific area of social work or maybe something different?
That is a tricky question. I have an answer for you somewhat. Even across the course of this course, when I first started, there was a certain area I wanted to work in, and that has changed over time. However, when I first graduate, I would like to work in the family dispute resolution sector. And a lot of that is because I'm passionate about it from lived experience. But I also have an increasing passion for social policy and research. And so that is something, when you say 5 to 10 years, I would say in the next 5, family dispute resolution, but then towards the 10-year mark, possibly into social policy and research.
Yeah, and what we often find is that when people start studying social work, they think they'll want to end up in a particular area. And often when they go out onto placement, they think, I had no idea. So I think being open about which area and knowing that that could change. And I think, Roseanne, you were saying before about social policies change, government funding changes. We've seen a rise in sort of NDIS services through that kind of disability sector. We've seen a real change. So social work's one of those professions that changes within that process. And so often we think we're going to work in a particular area, but end up in a completely different area. So that, I think that's one of the great things about social work, is that there are so many settings that you can work in. We've got a question here about what some research that Deakin is working on in the social work space. Beth, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, look, I think we have quite a large team of social workers. We have almost 20 academics across the university or around that. And people working in a variety of areas. We've got people working on in the mental health area, and we've got people working in violence and abuse. We've got people working, someone's working in the area of mothering and families. We've got, I work in the area of religion and spirituality, and I'm writing something on, and it's quite a few of us do work on the area of social work education. So there's quite a lot, it's quite an active research culture. Disability, it's another area where we've got plenty of number of people working. So, and there's other things going on as well. It's quite an active and really vibrant community.
And I think that speaks to some of the sector areas as well. So people's research often, because there's that breadth of sectors that social workers work in, research is often connected to those sectors too. We've got a question here. Can you get involved or advise on in policy or legal work around human rights with a social work degree?
Certainly policy. I mean, I know I do it, and certainly, I mean, there's centres, places like the Asylum Centre, Resource Centre, various migrant resource centres. There's a lot of places that employ social workers who have really got very much a human rights feel. There are some. I have known the occasional social worker who's actually said, I actually need to leave. They've got so involved, they say, oh, I've gone and done a law degree as well, and then their social work degree. I don't know, a few people, lawyers, have actually done social work degrees. So yes, there are a few people who have both joint degrees in law and social work, but there are lots of opportunities to work in the sector. I mean, a lot of people in the family violence area, particularly, would be one area where there's a lot of social workers working around social policy for that area.
And I think that's one of the beauty of our profession, really, is that our capacity to work in multidisciplinary environments. And Christy, I don't know if you've encountered that yet on placement, if you feel that we work with a lot of different other professions, and the legal profession certainly can be one of them. And then we have these converging perspectives, like a human rights perspective, which is very much embedded into that universal way of viewing universal rights for people. So sorry, Christy, I just kind of mentioned you there, but didn't give you a chance to say anything. But is that something you've noticed out on placement?
Majority of my placement has been online because it's a research-based placement as well. I have had an opportunity to go in, but I work with the research team with lots of different. The research team have lots of different backgrounds. One of my supervisors is actually a psychologist, and I also work with people on the torture and trauma team. So yeah, absolutely, there's a range of different, like I said, multidisciplinary teams where you're working with people from different backgrounds, different academic backgrounds and different experience, but together they inform, a more holistic approach, back to what Rojan was saying earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a question, and I know depending on which country we're talking about, social work means different things in that international context. So we've got a question: can you work overseas with an Australian social work qualification? I know in the UK, for example, social work's a 3-year qualification. In the US, it's more of a clinical qualification, sort of speaking generally. I know people who have qualified as social workers outside of Australia come in and then qualify or have their qualifications looked at by our professional association. Who wants to speak to this one, Rajan?
Yeah, I think it depends on, as Priscilla said, the country that you are going and the professional bodies of that countries. So probably Commonwealth and those countries that are based or English-based countries, your qualification might be recognized easier, as we also have this agreement within Australian Association of Social Workers. Definitely you can work based on your qualifications overseas, but as Priscilla said, it depends on those countries. And sometimes there are some programs, some international organizations that you can be part of it, like UN program or other, which I know one of my students is going to India after graduation. So it depends on those programs. Sometimes there are scholarship overseas programs, and depends on those contexts.
Thank you.
I think it also works a bit broader. So there'll be some countries where your Australian social work qualification will be easily recognised, and you'll be able to get a job as a social worker, particularly in countries where they have registration of social workers. But even if your social work qualification in that respect is not recognised, then there are often lots of jobs in the welfare sector where you're actually employable. So it's certainly, there are a lot of Australian social workers working overseas, and some foreign social workers working in Australia. So there are some ways in, and certainly in Australia, because there are a lot of jobs which don't require in the welfare sector social work qualification. There are a lot of people who've got social work qualifications from other countries who perhaps are waiting to see whether their qualifications would be recognised to work as a social worker in this country, are still working in the sector.
So there you have it. Social work is a nationally and internationally recognised profession, and we'd love to see you studying at Deakin with us in social work. If you've got further questions, stay online for the Q&A chat. And of course, the Deakin University website has lots of information. But I want to thank our panel today. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Christy, and thank you, Rajan.
Thank you.
And we look forward to welcoming you at Deakin University in social work.